Welcome to the regular meeting of the Larkspur City Council on Wednesday, September 16th, 2020. It's now 6:30 p.m. As you can see, we are doing this City Council meeting via video teleconference only. The instructions on how to do that are on the web page, and you can also engage with us by raising your hand within this meeting or by sending an email. We'll start the regular meeting now with a roll call.
Councilmember Kandel.
I am here.
Councilmember Paulson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Haroff.
Here.
Mayor Way.
Here. And we're expecting Councilmember Hilmer to join us shortly from the road. Item number 2 on the agenda is public comment. This is only for matters that are not listed on the agenda. This is a time for members of the public to address the City Council regarding items that are not on the agenda or are not part of the consent calendar. You have 2 minutes or 3 minutes, excuse me, to address the council. And remember, because it's not been on the agenda, we can't really engage in any conversation about it, but we could request for it to be put on an agenda at a future meeting. So do I have anyone in attendance who has raised their hand or is interested in speaking to the council on an issue that's not on the agenda?
I'm looking for any raised hands or emailed comments. And at this time, I see that there's no public comment.
Okay. And there's no email comments either? Is that what I heard you say?
That's correct.
Terrific. All right, then I'll close that item. That brings us to item number 4, which is approval of the consent calendar. Is there any member of the council who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar for discussion? Nope. Oh, Gabe Paulson would like to. What item is that, Gabe?
Madam Mayor, 4.3.
Okay. Is there any member of the public who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar for discussion? All right, seeing none. Okay. Let's return to the council, and at 4.3, Gabe, would you like to begin the discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I basically, it looks like a very simple resolution to update our conflict of interest code. But in the spirit of the last item I removed, which was cybersecurity, I just thought for the public's sake, it's good to know what our conflict of interest codes are. So I thought maybe the city manager could briefly describe, what, sort of measures we take to prevent conflict of interest and what this is.
So this item is to add a position to the list of positions that are required to file about their business interests and holdings, so that it's possible for the city clerk and or the city attorney to determine if there's any sort of conflict that individual might have financially with the activities of the city. So in this particular item, I think we're adding the Director of Community Services to the list and affirming the list as it has existed in the past. But the primary purpose of this section of code is to ensure that members of the council and members of the staff, and then some associated contract positions and consultants can't gain unduly from, or have a fiduciary gain as a result of business of the city.
Is that clear now,
Yeah,
Gabe?
I'm not sure that was quite the way you wanted to state it.
Yeah. I'm trying to say you're not supposed to gain
right
the activity of the city.
Right. I just wanted to clarify the
right.
fiduciary aspect of it.
I think you may have meant you're not supposed to gain financially based on your fiduciary duty to the city. So
yeah, I think that's probably one.
All right.
Right.
Gabe, is there other further explanation on that, or are you comfortable with that?
Thank you. I just wanted that to be, stated so people understand. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it looks like I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar 4.1 to 4.4.
Motion.
Okay, Scott Kandel, thank you. And a second?
A second.
It sounds like Gabe Paulson seconded it. So Allison, can we do a roll call?
Councilmember Kandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Paulson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Haroff,
Yes.
Mayor Way.
Yes, and I see Councilmember Dan Hilmer's online now.
I say aye.
Okay, great, welcome.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to item 5, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. This city staff has been very busy over the last week and a half with COVID-related matters, some of which I'll report about later, but thought I'd speak up front because we sometimes lose our public before the end of the meeting, and just say that the city is now the enforcement agent for COVID issues, and folks are welcome to use our SIP violations email or continue to use the county. Folks seem to be more comfortable sending things to the county and they're forwarding them to us. It's been really helpful though when we get the feedback of concerns people have, because most of it's about educating. And so we continue to do as much education as we can, particularly around the issue of wearing your mask. I also want to let the council know for the first time in several years, we have a complete crew working in our maintenance division. That we've had some turnover in the crew, and then it can be challenging to find a recruit that's a good fit for our operation, but we have a full 6-man crew. We've had that for 2 weeks, and our maintenance superintendent is thrilled. Unfortunately, because of the smoke, we haven't been out doing some of the maintenance outdoors that we would like to do. We've been concentrating on some of the interior items that we needed to deal with to keep our crew safe. With the better air, they'll be back out there. A lot of weeds to deal with right now. And then lastly, because of the smoke, we postponed putting up banners promoting business in Larkspur and promoting COVID-related adjustments like dining outdoors. With the smoke now dissipating, we're going to have those banners put up on light poles. And this came from a grant that the Transportation Authority of Marin provided to all the different towns to do some promotion around being outdoors and businesses around the roadways. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Great. Are there questions of that report? Thank you for that. And it's nice to see the smoke clearing finally,
Yes.
at least for now. We'll move on to council members' reports and comments. Oral reports and comments. Do I have any of the council members who would like to give an update on anything? Oh, Gabe does.
Yeah, there you go.
And Dan, Hilmer, I can't see you. If you do have one, just speak up. Okay, go ahead, Gabe.
Thank you. Just two points I wanted to, or 2 areas, the fires and some of the business recovery. So working with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Agency and also the Twin Cities Disaster Prep Group, there have been some interesting milestones that I just wanted to report briefly. And one is the inspections of homes. So with the fires and the smoke, a lot of us are concerned, and I really thought it was timely to say a little bit more about what's going on. So to date, I think there have been 1,800 inspections, and that's single family and multi-family, and 100 warning letters have been sent for the biggest offenders. So the Marin Wildfire Prevention Agency has been really busy trying to educate people and create defensible space and really prepare us, should the fires come any closer. And another really big thing has been the Chipper Day program. So I kind of prematurely put it in the chat box. If anyone wants the link, it's there. It's chipper.com. And that's a great place to see in your neighborhood when things are going to be cleared. So I know that there was discussion last time about Greenbrae and the PG&E fire issues, and an enormous amount of yard waste and whatnot was disposed. I think it was to the tune of 25,000 cubic feet in Central Marin in general, and a lot in Greenbrae Hills. And right now we have coming up on September 28th, there will be a lot of chipper work in Blue Rock, right, sort of behind the Magnolia West corridor there. And so if you just go to that website and punch in your information, your zip code, or your street, I think, it'll tell you what day, and you can put a 10 by 4 by 4 pile in front of your house and it'll be cleared out for free. So again, these are just things to help us with the fires. And then on the business side, I got the word. I think perhaps the city manager or somebody can confirm, but I think we've been moved from widespread tier 1 to substantial tier 2 on Marin Recovers, and I'm putting that link into the chat right now. And that's really allowing businesses to do a lot more activity. I think 50% occupancy in retail and 25 in churches and museums and so forth. So it's really allowing activity to increase. And just
Did you want to speak just a second? Because I think Dan Schwartz had a comment about that particular aspect.
No, actually on the last item, the website is chipperday.com, not chipper.com. So I just want to clarify that for the public.
Hopefully that doesn't take us to an inappropriate website or something.
I tried it. It actually doesn't go anywhere, but Chief Martin is in the audience and he has provided the correct address. It's chipperday.com.
Okay, I put that in there. Thank you, Chief Martin. I think you told me this, so sorry for bastardizing your message. And sorry, the last point was just kind of a call out. I really wanted to do this a while ago from the business chamber. So, thanking our Vice Mayor Kevin Haroff and also Jolie Servetto. It was about a month ago where they dispersed $51,000 of funds that were raised. I think it was something to the tune of $1,400 or $500 per business for 33 businesses. So I really feel that that was an enormous success for the chamber, which has stood up more. And I know Vice Mayor Haroff and Julie were very active in that. So just to know they've really been trying to support our businesses. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Great. Kevin, is there anything you want to speak on?
Oh, yeah, just to follow up, and thanks very much, Gabe, for I wanted to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
I never know. But thanks, Gabe, for acknowledging the work that the chamber is doing. We had our monthly Chamber of Commerce call this morning. I was on it, and they're working hard, trying to support local businesses, and everything you said is accurate, and I think it's important for us to continue to support their efforts. We've actually got some openings on the board, so if there are folks that that might be interested in being involved, let me know or let Julie know, because we need to fill out the capacity for our board membership. The other thing that I just wanted to mention on Sunday, actually, I spent a couple of hours on a call that was organized by the county on Marin justice issues, where we're working together with both the county as well as various representatives, electeds from different municipalities, to have a robust and ongoing conversation about racial and equity issues in Marin, and how we can better respond to them. So it was a very helpful call. We're going to be working in kind of some subcommittees. So I'll be working with one of the representatives from Ross as well as Novato in that process, and I think it'll be very helpful, a helpful thing. I'm very excited about it. And then finally, I'm looking forward on Friday to our MC annual retreat, where we will, within the MCE community, catch up on what is happening both with MCE as well as the CCA community and various other issues having to do with power supply and transportation issues. So that'll be an exciting thing for me. So I'm looking forward to that. That's it.
Great, thank you. Scott, anything you'd like to speak on, or?
Not today, thank you.
Okay. And Dan Hilmer, I can't tell if you are, do you have any
I'm
Council
fine,
report?
Madam Mayor. Not this
Okay,
evening. I'm on my phone because I'm in my car.
I understand.
All right, thank
Great. I hope you're not driving though.
you. No.
Good. All right, so I just want to do a few things and most of them are sort of a similar follow-up to what Councilmember Paulson talked about. The Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, which is the JPA we all voted on in March, has openings for the Citizens Advisory Committee. And each of the zones has a Citizen Advisory Committee representative, and there are other stakeholder representatives. So I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Gabe, I think that application is due on the 24th. If we have any member of our community who'd be interested in representing us, or District 2, which is, I believe, the district that we're in. So that's available on their website. The second item is also a follow-up for Gabe's, is that many of you know I'm on the board of Fire Safe Marin, and they're doing a community organizing for wildfire preparedness webinar on Tuesday, September 29th. We have many Firewise communities in Marin, and in fact, we lead the nation in Firewise communities. And we're always hoping to get more, and neighborhoods can organize themselves not only in neighborhood response groups, but also in Firewise and Fire Safe communities. And that's an opportunity to learn more about that. You can find that information on the Fire Safe Marin website. And then two other things. To my other council members, just recognize that the Marin mayors and council members are regrouping for our monthly dinner and speaker series that starts next Wednesday. So you should be getting an invitation to join. Our last meeting was in June, and then we had summer off. So that should be coming out soon. I don't think we're doing host cities anymore since we're not actually being in a city, but we'll see what the agenda is. And then lastly, for those of you who are listening who have not completed your census, please complete the census. I think we have a really good turnout in Marin, but every one of our members of our community who completes that census, it's best for our local governance. That's how we figure out state and local funding for schools and for roads and for all sorts of things. So please complete your census. And that census2020.gov, I believe, is the website. Looks like I have a question from the audience, or no, that's Gabe updating some things. So terrific, that has us move to number 7, which is public hearings, and tonight we have none. So we're on to our business item 8, which is a continuation of the preferential parking permit program that was discussed at the last council meeting. Since I was not at the last council meeting, I was on vacation in Portland, Vice Mayor Haruff took over this agenda item and led that discussion. So for tonight, I have asked him to, in the spirit of continuation, to also guide this conversation tonight on this business item. I'd like to refer everyone to the agenda that is posted online, in which the city clerk has put in public comment that has already arrived, so you can read that. Also, I believe in this item, before we get started, that we have 2 council members who will need to step out and recuse themselves, and that's Councilmember Gabe Paulson and Councilmember Dan Hilmer, since they live within, their primary residence is within the area of this preferential parking permit program that we're discussing. So Allison will help them step out of our room and then come back in when this conversation is done. Dan Hilmer, are you able to sign off? There he goes. Okay. Take it away, Kevin.
Audience.
Thank you, Allison.
So this item is going to be presented to you by City Clerk Allison Fallis, and I want to say that Allison has, throughout this program, done the lion's share of the work, and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor Way. The council is asked tonight to continue its discussion on the pilot parking permit program and potentially vote on new boundaries. At your August 19th meeting, you received results from a survey conducted of participants in the pilot year of the program and provided feedback on potential new boundaries for the program to address neighborhood concerns. A notice listing the proposed new boundaries was sent to parking permit residents on August 26th, and information was given on how to provide feedback to the council for tonight's meeting. The staff report included maps of the proposed revised boundaries for the program. And right now I will pull up the map that was prepared for the Heather Gardens neighborhood, which only included addresses on William Avenue and Diane Lane. In response, we received several public comments from addresses wishing to be added or removed. Let's see. First up, we received a request from 218 William Avenue to be removed. This request is easy to accommodate as the end boundary of William Avenue can be moved up to 300 William or higher, starting on the east side of Chanticleer Street. There were also many comments received from residents of the Midway, Liberty, and Heather Streets areas nearest to the entrance of the Redwood football field. The following addresses requested to be added back into the program. We had 11 Midway, 12 Liberty, 31 Midway, 20 Liberty, 27 Midway, 11 Heather, 8 Heather, and 22 Heather. This bundle of addresses may indicate the council should adjust the boundaries to include those streets again in the program. However, it's important to note that 19 Midway and 21 Liberty submitted public comments stating that they did not want to be included again. Additionally, responses to the survey circulated in July and August showed 71% and 83% of respondents on Liberty and Midway did not want the program to continue at that time. Lastly, 414 William Avenue and 308 William Avenue wrote in to say that they also did not want the program to continue on their street. So this revised boundary map was created to potentially incorporate the neighborhood around Liberty Street, Midway Road, and a portion of Heather Way closest to the high school football field entrance, as well as removing the very last address previously included on William Ave, that's number 218. The council should weigh whether the comments received warrant adjusting the map to include this area. In response to the other William Avenue addresses requesting to no longer be included, you could adjust the boundaries further by cutting off William Avenue at 414 William Ave or some other point. However, it's unclear if there are addresses in this red block that did still support continuing the parking program on their street that haven't been represented in the recent public comment. All right, and then moving on to the Larkspur Marina, your staff report included this revised map of new boundaries for the program. In response, we heard from the following addresses wishing not to be included. 99 Via La Brisa and 125 Riviera Circle. There was also a letter from a resident stating to write on behalf of the 500 to 700 block of Riviera Circle, wishing not to be included. However, specific addresses were not called out in that letter. Balancing the geographic location of the addresses wishing not to be included and the positive responses received from other neighbors on continuing the program, it's recommended that the boundaries of the Larkspur Marina remain the same as proposed in the staff report, unless any additional compelling public comment requests are received this evening. Lastly, other items the council may wish to discuss this evening is whether to charge for parking permits or continue the program for another year without charge to be reevaluated next fall. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, Madam Mayor, it's Kevin Haroff. My network connection failed me here a moment ago, so but I'm back on now.
We hear you.
Okay. So, do you want me to lead this conversation, or
Sure.
what do you want to do?
No, you go for it because you were part of the
City manager's
original
waving his finger here. So
yes.
I just wanted to add one point. In a lot of the correspondence, there's comments about the visitor parking permit aspect of this. When someone has a person come, how do they issue a visitor permit? The policy leaves the discretion for that part of the process to the staff. And so we're aware of the concerns, and we're going to try to figure out if there's a less cumbersome way for folks to indicate a car is supposed to be there because it's visiting someone. So the council doesn't really need to deliberate that today,
Right.
because that was left to staff. I just want to make that clear.
So that's mostly an administrative
So
matter.
can I ask a question, Dan Schwartz, on the recusal? Is it because of the program as a whole, or is it because of the Heather Gardens neighborhood for our two other council members? Because can they weigh in on the separate marina project?
I'll have to defer to the city attorney on that. I don't have an answer to that.
I'd have to have measurements, honestly.
Okay.
Basically under the current FPPC guidelines, there's a 500-foot rule and a 1,000-foot rule, and I'd need to be able to do those measurements. I need to have those measurements and then evaluate the rules. I think our thinking was, though, considering the program as a whole, contemplates potential financial obligations or the waiver of those obligations and rules, that it was best that they recuse themselves from consideration of the program,
Okay.
regardless of the geographical location of the different parts of it.
Okay. This is Kevin again. Sorry, right at the most opportune time, my network collapsed on me for this particular matter, but I'm back on. So, are there any members of the council that want to ask any questions of our city manager or city attorney on this issue at this point?
Well, I have a question for.
If not, we'll go ahead, please.
Sorry, I have a question for I guess you and Catherine, as far as how to tackle this and what our goals are. Are we do we go street by street? Do we say majority rules? If 75% said yes and 25% said no, then we just say we're going to go with the majority. How are we planning on? What is our process going to be to make this decision?
Well, I'll invite our city manager to comment on that, but I think we have a recommendation that, because we already have a program in place, and I think we're trying to accommodate public input as far as the scope of that we've received so far, and I think our public process is our conversation tonight.
My recommendation to the council would be to focus on, if you want to restore any particular street segments to the boundaries, or you'd like to launch the pilot with the staff recommended boundaries. And I think you probably need to talk about each segment that weighed in. And I'm using the word segment because I know the police chief, if he were present, would say he would prefer you not define the boundaries mid-street, that it can, for example, on Heather, it can go to an intersection with one of the side streets, but he wouldn't recommend it be halfway down a particular block, because it'll be difficult for his staff to know where that demarcation is.
So let me ask a question for Dan and also, I guess, Allison. When you came up with your proposed map, did you give preference, for example, if one person said they wanted it and one person said they didn't want it, was your preference to force somebody into the program that didn't want it, or was your preference not to force anybody in and to opt somebody out that did want to be in it?
No, we focused on, in Heather Gardens, we focused on the two streets that from day one, going back well over a year ago, said they had a problem. And that was William and Diane. Those were always the streets we were hearing from. And so we proposed they remain in the pilot program in their entirety, up to the boundary we had established for William. And then in the Marina neighborhood, we looked a little bit at the survey results, and we also looked at historical practice, because the Marina before we established this new program. And so the boundaries we proposed there tended to reflect the balance of what we were hearing from the neighborhood plus the 20-minute parking. In the marina, it's a little easier because until we got that last-minute letter from somebody who said they represented a large number of addresses, we've sort of consistently heard there's a problem in the areas close to the high school, and there's not a problem in the deeper part of the neighborhood.
And I'm sorry, can I ask you to go through this with the picture
Yeah, sure.
brought up? So
Why don't we start with Heather Gardens? Can
Yeah.
you call that back up, Allison?
Yes, I'll pull it up here. This is the Heather Gardens with the comments that we've received to date, and then this would be adjusting it to include those new streets.
So why don't we show
And I
it?
think it's appropriate because I know, Scott, you don't live in that particular area, but if you were to look at this map where this sign that says City of Larkspur up on the top right, that's
Right.
Redwood High School
Right.
back entrance. So
Mhm.
William right here is the back entrance into Redwood.
So if I guess my question is, if you go back and forth between those two that you just had up, you had, 2 no's and 7 yeses or 8 yeses, whatever it is. So was that what we based our decision on to include that whole area? That, it was, 4-1 yeses to no, so we included it?
So Allison was just showing you, so this map in front of you now is the staff recommendation. And then on the next map, she's showing you what we think is a logical boundary if you want to add the streets that we heard from. And also if you want to take the one home off of William that's at the Chanticleer intersection.
And Dan, I'm sorry, I know your recommendation was originally not to include these. Now that you have received, the feedback of people who wanted to be included, people who didn't, is this your new recommendation of what the boundary should be?
No, I still recommend the prior map.
And could you explain why?
And then if we start to have a problem on Liberty or Midway, we can add them back in.
Okay, can you explain why your recommendation is this map as opposed to the other one if so many people were asking to be included?
Because historically, we've never had complaints from residents of Liberty or Midway that there was a parking problem on those streets. Not one related to the high school students.
Okay, fair.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to, Mayor or
No,
Vice Mayor.
no, that's fine. Did you have any other questions for staff?
I did, but not on this map. So if anybody else had questions about this map, now would be a great time.
I think this is a good opportunity for you to ask whatever questions you have.
Okay. Okay, so can we go to the next map then? Okay, and I'm sorry, Dan, can you go through the same analysis of why you decided this and the other option and why you chose not to go with the other option?
The Marina neighborhood, just for context, the Marina neighborhood has a property owners association. And when we were launching the pilot program, we engaged the property owners association in lengthy discussions. And through those discussions, we decided the pilot program should encompass the whole neighborhood to see how it would work. Throughout the year, and even in the preliminary feedback we started getting from our survey and from our letters, was this commentary that the back end of the neighborhood does not see high schoolers. They don't want to park that far from the school. So we looked at the streets we have historically heard there's a problem on, and we drew the boundaries heavily based on that feedback from the past. And so that's how we came up with this proposal. And then if Allison goes to the next diagram, or it might be this one. So this came as a surprise that we received this letter suggesting they represented the area that's on the left side of this map, saying none of these folks want to be in the boundary. That's not our historical experience. So,
And I'm sorry, do we have any way to verify how many people are actually represented by this letter, and how accurate it is or anything like that?
we would have to actually send something to each of these households and get them to respond.
Okay, were there a number of signatures on the letter? I'm sorry, I didn't see the letter. Was it like a petition? Or was it just a letter from one or two people saying they represent everybody?
The letter was from one representative with no specific addresses listed or additional co-signers.
Okay.
It seems like, and that's really the high impact area, because that is directly in front of the entrance to the high school.
Well, it would be really hard to take the ingress to the neighborhood, ingress egress out of the program. It would actually create some distinct challenges in terms of how we would sign the area and how we would administer it.
Right.
And there's also two entrances to this neighborhood, and that's the primary entrance right there. Yeah. Okay.
Dan, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I had one more question. I'm sorry. So this one I'm fairly comfortable with. The other map that we had spoken about, I know you are favoring the original map because there were no potential issues with the people who are now asking to be added. My question is there any downside in adding them? Because if people want to be part of a program, is there a reason not to
follow it up with the shading?
It would help me too if you spoke of which particular neighborhood.
Yeah, let's all talk one at a time, actually. So Dan, go ahead.
This is Heather Gardens here. I think the only part of this boundary, I would probably say that we should probably take the homes out of this boundary that are on Heather to the west of Midway. I just think it's going to be really hard to administer two houses in. I think doing it to an intersection is just a lot easier to administer.
Okay, and I'm sorry, can we go back to the other picture that showed how many of those pluses are in that area? We would now, so there's 4 of the 8 are in that area. Is that?
So the one person, I don't have the pointer, but Allison, if you can go on Heather, there's one, so that person would be the person that wouldn't get what they're asking for. If you want, in my thought, because I think you should draw the boundary to the intersection.
Right. Okay, so I'm sorry, if the boundary goes to the intersection, wouldn't all 4 of the pluses to the left of that intersection be not part of it?
No, it would just be the home on Heather that's got a plus on it. So go back, Allison, and because the street names are on the other, yeah. So those 2 homes on Heather, the second one indicated that they wanted to be included. But I think that's a really challenging administrative boundary for the police. I think it would be much better if it was drawn to the intersection with Midway.
Got it.
Okay, any other questions of staff at this point?
Would you consider that same argument to the house at the very end of Heather? It's at the corner of Chanticleer and Heather. Not Heather. Yeah, William. Excuse me, William and Chanticleer.
That's a really easy adjustment because we would just define the boundary as being to the eastern side of Chanticleer there. So taking that one house out that asked to be taken out does not present, I think, a real challenge for the police.
I'm sorry, I may be misunderstanding. So if you look at the boundary between Midway and Heather, that corner, you're saying everything, I guess, to the west of Midway, you would remove. Is that right?
On Heather.
On Heather. So everything north of Heather you would include, and everything south of it, Heather.
The homes that have a Midway address would be in, and the homes on Heather that are west of Midway would not be.
Got it. So the ones to the west of Midway that have a Midway address are included, and those are the ones that are shaded.
Correct. Correct.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for those questions and for your responses, Dan and Allison, on that. I'm not sure that anything that came out of this conversation necessarily warrants a change to staff's recommendation, but we can come back after we have an opportunity for public comment. So unless there's anything else from the council, I think it's time to open it up to the public.
Thank you. I'm looking for any raised hands from the public who wish to make public comment. And I see Christine Waldeck. You can unmute yourself and it's your turn for public comment.
Thank you. This is Christina Waldeck from 12 Liberty Street. On the 8th of this month, I sent out a letter to the 16 houses on Midway and Liberty Street to see if my neighbors had received your notice about how the parking program was going to be decided. And I asked if anyone agreed that we should ask to be included in this. And I received 6 responses from my neighbors. And as Allison showed you, of the 7 of us, 5 of us would like to be included in the program, or would like our streets to be included, and 2 of our neighbors are opposed. And I was just the conduit for bringing you information. So thank you for listening.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Allison, anybody else?
I'm looking for any further raised hands at this time, and I see none. And I'm looking for any emailed public comment. Oh, sorry, I see one raised hand. We'll go back to Bob Rosenfeld. You can unmute yourself for public comment.
Thank you. Yes, I live right at the entrance to Redwood High School at 657 Riviera Circle. And I don't know who it was who said that we didn't want to be included, but we definitely do. We're right here at the entrance. We get all the students, and we definitely do want to be included. So just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, good. Thank you for that.
And
Oops.
I apologize. I disabled the speaking too quickly. I will bring Bob Rosenfeld back to continue his comment.
Oops.
I think he slipped away.
I think he's
no,
away.
I just had to click
there he
the
is.
unmute button there. I was also saying that it's a safety issue. We see, because kids are no longer allowed to leave Redwood High School at lunch. Once they park on campus, they cannot leave. That is encouraging them to park in front of our house so that they can go out to lunch on their 37-minute lunch. The lunch is so short that they rush. We've seen cars still in motion with kids jumping in and out of them. So just pointing out that this is again why we think it's so important that this continue because of that Redwood High School lunch policy. We want all the kids to be safe, and if they're parking right here, they're not going to be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public, Allison?
Thank you. We have a comment from Dan Hilmer. Dan, you may unmute yourself and provide comment.
Oh, that's right. He is a member of the public in this context. That's right. Great.
I just have a question for the council. What happens if the cars that are not allowed to park on the streets in the program all shift down to the western segments of Heather, for example, and just other streets adjacent to the program streets that are not included in this program? What's the process for adapting should those impacts be created?
And you look like you want to respond. There you go.
The way we had proposed the program be set up in the second year of the pilot is that if we observe that all we're doing is moving the parked cars deeper into the neighborhood, staff would have the discretion to add those segments back into the program. That's very similar to the authority you gave us last year. If we observed that the new program was pushing the cars into other neighborhoods, we'd have some discretion to deal with that quickly to bring those streets in to the program. You know, none of us are quite certain what the tolerance point is for high school students in terms of how far away they are willing to be from the campus. And your speaker, I think we have two problems going on. Because we know where kids are parking that aren't in these neighborhoods, but those are kids who are choosing to park because they don't qualify for whatever reason for on-campus parking. They're so far away, we know they're not racing to their car and taking off because it's just too far. I think the sensitivity in these two neighborhoods is the kids may try to push the boundary so they can do this behavior that we're hearing about at lunchtime, where they're trying to get in their car and go. And that certainly is an element of this program that we're trying to discourage that behavior. So the short answer to this comment or question from the public is staff would be able to add segments back in as needed.
And I think that's important for us to have that ability to have the staff add in, because we are in an unusual time where much of this program has been tested in a time when students aren't on campus, and we don't know what that variable might change once they're all back. And that might be in the spring when more of the campus population has automobile and driver's licenses. So I like that question, Dan.
Great. Anybody else from the public wants to add in here? Allison?
I'm looking for any final public comment in email or raised hands, and I see that there is none.
Okay, great. Well, in that case, let's bring it back to the council for discussion, and I'll let anyone who wants to start have something to say.
I'd like to just refer back to Ms. Waldeck's comment, and she's on Liberty, and I'd like to see, Allison, that map once again so I can get a clear idea of that street. I believe she said 57. So Liberty is, there you go, thank you. Right, so we're talking about proposing that entire street up to what we were talking about, Midway. Okay, I just wanted to see where she was discussing.
Okay, anything else, Mayor?
No.
Okay, anything from other members of the council?
Well, I'll give you my thoughts on this. I think the marina portion, the staff recommendation makes sense, and I would be in favor of that. As far as the second part, the Heather area, I would vote that instead of going with the staff recommendation, we go with the second version of staff recommendation, which would be to extend it to, I guess it's to Midway. And the reason being, I think our job is to represent our constituents, and it sounds like our constituents are asking us to do that. And if it doesn't cause too many problems with enforcement, which it sounds like our city manager said it wouldn't, I don't see any reason not to extend it in order to include people who want to be included. So that would be my position.
Okay. Great. Could I just ask our city manager to comment on that? Because one of the things that I thought was helpful in your comments is the the importance of the staff having the ability to make discretionary decisions, based upon circumstances going forward. I don't have a strong feeling about it one way or the other personally, but I do recognize the fact that we're going into a school year that is unlike any other that we've ever seen. So I'm not sure that it makes much of a difference one way or the other where we go, but I appreciate your comment on that.
Staff has no concern really making the adjustment that Councilmember Kendall is talking about. I think that's easy. Parking in front of your house is on the top 10 things that people get surprisingly passionate about. And so this program has folks who love it and folks who hate it among the residents, because when you're inconvenienced, when you want to park or when your friends want to park, it's frustrating. And then when it's doing its job and discouraging behaviors and from a particular segment, in this case, the high school students, then you love the program. And staff recognizes that, and we're just trying to find boundaries that balance those conflicting interests among the community.
So if we were to make the modest adjustments that I think Councilmember Handel is suggesting, we could do that tonight and then leave it to staff to exercise their discretion about making adjustments as necessary, given what may or may not happen in terms of the school year.
I think to be clean and clear with the public, it might be best if we brought this back with the revised maps as a
yeah, I think that's right.
We can just put on the consent calendar at the next council meeting that this was the direction we received from council, and we can clarify that speaker's question about the boundaries will be amended if there's problems, so that way folks see that was in writing.
Right, that makes sense to me.
It sounds like we have consensus on the Larkspur Marina area. Do we need to bring that back? Or just the Heather Gardens?
I think we would just bring it all back at the next meeting. The kids aren't going to be back in school before you meet again, so I think we'll be okay to just have a nice, clean copy that gets adopted by the council.
So do you feel you have direction from the council at this point to make whatever adjustments that need to be made based on this conversation?
I believe what I heard is we should add Liberty and Midway into the boundary, and then we should accommodate the person who's on the west side of
William in Chanticleer.
Chanticleer, thank you, and take that home out of the boundary. And then we should go with staff's recommendation for the marina boundary.
Yeah, I think that's right. And any other comments from the council?
No, I agree.
I agree. My only comment is, Dan, I just want to say thank you. I can't speak for any other council members, but for me, this is exactly what makes my life easy. That if you just said, hey, here's one thing, it's very hard for me because if I disagree, I don't know what the alternatives are. Here you kind of presented two very clear alternatives. It made sense why you picked those two alternatives, and you gave us the option to say which of those do we think makes more sense, as opposed to council draw the boundaries. We're not going to be able to do that. So I just want to say thank you, and that I know you and I have talked about, different people have different styles. This is exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you.
I'm going to just turn around and say all those thanks belong to Allison.
Allison, thank you.
Good job, Allison.
Yeah.
Good.
Allison did a great job tonight, and I think we should all express our appreciation for that. So if we have a clear understanding about the adjustments that have been proposed as a result of the conversation we've had tonight, can I have a motion?
Looks like it's you and me, Scott.
Not exactly sure what the motion would be. The motion would be to revise this and come back to the next meeting.
I think so.
I think Councilmember Kendall's question is probably on point. Vice Mayor Hoff, I think we have sufficient direction, and you'll take your vote on the consent calendar at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So these revisions will be made, and we'll just tee it up in the consent calendar at the next meeting and vote on that. So I guess we don't need a motion at all tonight as a result.
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, great. Great conversation.
Good.
Okay,
So now we'll
and
bring our 2 council members back.
Yep. Thank you, Kevin.
yeah, of course.
And we have Kathy Orm joining our room. There's Mr. Paulson. Everybody's going to park in front of your house now, Gabe. That's our plan. You didn't know that, but that was our plan. We're going to stack them in front of your house. Dan Hilmer, are you with us? Almost?
Yes.
Oh, yay. Okay, great. So we're moving on to 8.2, which is our financial update. Preliminary review of fiscal year 2019-2020. The city manager has a report.
I do, Madam Mayor. I'm going to do a brief PowerPoint. I want to note that Administrative Services Director Kathy Orm, who is your finance person and the city's treasurer, is now present in the meeting to assist and answer any questions as we go forward. Hopefully, if I did that correctly, the screen has filled up with the PowerPoint.
It
Looks
has.
good.
All right. So this is the second of a series of financial updates we're doing for the council to prepare you for discussions you may want to have around revenue and or expenditure issues you want to tackle as we go through this difficult fiscal year where we're dealing with so many variables we've never seen or dealt with before. So let's get this to advance correctly. So at your last meeting, I did a very sort of academic exercise of talking about service levels and how we think about service levels. At this meeting, we're going to do a preliminary review of the fiscal year that just ended on June 30. Our fiscal year is July 1st to June 30. And so this is about the time of year when we're starting to feel comfortable that we know what the final numbers were, because as the council's heard before, there's a lot of delay, there's a lot of lag in the arrival of different revenue streams and different expenditures. And so we don't typically fully close our books until at least the end of August. Sometimes we have to go a little later depending on whatever's going on in terms of the finances. I can tell you that the auditors have been here virtually for the last week or two. Kathy can probably spend a long time venting about the challenges of doing an audit remotely using our new digital means, but that's a sign that we're getting close to where the books are closed, and we're going to work with the auditors to prepare a report for you on how the fiscal year ended. At your next council meeting, we'll start to talk about what we're seeing in terms of trends and indicators. We're starting to have data trickle in. We're in discussions with our sales tax analysts on different ways to look at the data so that we can give you a report that'll help you understand what we think the economy is and isn't doing in the pandemic economy. And then we also, next meeting, will look a little more on the expenditure side of the equation and give you a sense of what your general plan expenditures are, what the general plan pays for. Our budget is bigger than the general fund. We do a lot of work in our capital projects and in other funds that the council's created. That should say general fund, not general plan. I just realized it's a typo. So I'll have to fix that. And then, we on 21st are going to talk about mandates. We're going to talk about obligations and expenditure levels. We're also going to look at possible revenue opportunities, and then we're going to seek direction from the council on next steps. Okay, so the key points that I wanted to make for the council, and we gave you a memo to kind of give you an overview of what happened last year. We also gave you month-by-month runs of revenue so you could sort of see them. Our system's not perfect for running month-by-month reports, but if you start to look at the cumulative effect in different accounts, you can start to see the trends over the year. one important thing for folks as they look at our data month to month that I should caution is that because the state is constantly sort of adjusting and tweaking a lot of the revenue streams in terms of as information comes into them and they need to get it out to municipalities. It doesn't shock us when there's a slow month followed by a really high month in a particular revenue stream. What we look at is trends because we know the state's doing a true up constantly to adjust for different receipts that come in. So with all that said, here's some key points from last fiscal year. We were having robust revenue returns for the first 8 months of the fiscal year. We were doing really well against budget. We were outperforming budget. Our first property tax payments had come in on point, so we were very pleased with the way we were trending before the shelter in place in March. Shelter in place began in March, and the most obvious and immediate impact to the city was the decimation of the transient occupancy tax. That's the hotel tax. We have 3 main contributors to the transient occupancy tax. The vast majority of it's paid by in our case, our one hotel, the Courtyard by Marriott. We do have 2 parks here that allow transient RV parking. And so they do pay TOT, but it's very modest in scale to our hotel. Then March through June, we saw a steady decline in our local sales tax. And I'm emphasizing local as point of sales in Larkspur. So that's your cash registers here in Larkspur. That's not surprising. People were sheltering in place. They weren't eating at restaurants, which for us is a big part of our sales tax base. And so we saw a steady decline there. But because we have Measure B, and Measure B is captured online as well as at cash registers, we actually were able to see that our online sales were remaining fairly sound. So we know that people were still shopping. They just had transitioned online. Very much the story we've all seen and heard happening regionally and nationally. In the end of the year, we got 2 pleasant surprises. Probably the biggest surprise for us was the stunning surge in our property tax. Property tax came in 6% above budget. That means property tax did close to 11% better than the year prior. We're still trying to sort out what explains that, but Kathy's been looking at the transfer tax returns in different months, and we are seeing significant transfer tax revenues. Transfer tax occurs when a home is sold. And so when a home is sold, it's reassessed. And so we believe a lot of this surge is actually homes that were probably on the tax rolls for many years at a low assessment, and now they've come in at a higher assessment. We think that's probably the largest explanation here. Also, the Marin assessor left the allowable COLA, the adjustment in place for all assessments. And so the whole base was moving upward. But this is just an amazing trend. And our assessor has a frankly unbelievable track record of accuracy in predicting what the property tax returns are going to be. So for the assessor to have been 6% under is not something we're accustomed to. So that was a good thing. And I'll talk about that in a dollar amount in a little while. The other thing, and I talked about this in the memo I gave to you, and we're still wrapping our heads around it, is unbudgeted Wayfair revenue. And we've been collectively sort of referring to this new sales tax stream as Wayfair money. And Wayfair is a business. A lot of people are familiar with it, wayfair.com. They sell furniture. Wayfair was the name assigned to a lawsuit filed by the state of South Dakota. And it was the state of South Dakota versus Wayfair. And it went to the US Supreme Court. And South Dakota was arguing that Wayfair should be required to collect sales tax when a resident of South Dakota makes a purchase from wayfair.com, and that sales tax should be sent to the state of South Dakota. A lot of states joined that argument, and the Supreme Court did ultimately rule in South Dakota's favor. And so this past fiscal year was the first fiscal year since the decision was made. The way it's being handled currently for the state is that Wayfair money is ending up in a big pot, and then it's being distributed out through a methodology the states created that's heavily population-based to the various jurisdictions that collect sales tax. And so we didn't budget for Wayfair because it was a new thing and we weren't certain how it would work. We were still adjusting to the fact that it was going to happen. In my memo to you, Kathy and I thought the large amount of sales tax, or mostly I thought the large amount of sales tax we got at the end of the fiscal year reflects Wayfair. We now think probably what happened is the state was doing its constant methodology of true-upping the numbers as sales tax receipts roll in. We probably were seeing some of our Wayfair returns all through the year. And then for a variety of reasons, there was a huge lag this year in sales tax returns. And so when you look at our sales tax numbers, we got a bunch of money in July and August that was actually part of last fiscal year. And so we booked it into last fiscal year. And some of it's explained by Wayfair, some of it's explained by the state's methodology and system, some of it's explained by the fact that sales tax revenues tend to take a while, up to 2 months, to flow to the city. But nonetheless, my point with all this discussion is this has been an unexpected boost to our revenue.
And just to be clear, in this memo that you sent, Wayfair, the Wayfair revenue is not broken out, or do we have a dollar amount listed in here? So
at this time, the state is not breaking it out for us. So the city contracts with HDL to be its sales tax consultant, and HDL is working on a methodology with the state to break out the Wayfair money. So we expect within a month or two, we'll be able to start telling you what that amount of money is. But initially, the state hasn't been telling us where the different pots are coming from. They've just been sending us the revenue. So we don't have it broken out yet.
Dan, can I ask a quick question about the Wayfair? Is there a corresponding loss equivalent to the gain? So for example, if somebody buys someone's in South Carolina and they buy something from a store online in California, does California now lose the tax that South Carolina is gaining?
So the long-term effect here is that point of sale will shift and is shifting to where the consumer is based, not where the business is necessarily based. I will double check on the answer, but I believe the answer to your question is yes. That's correct. The difference though for California, and one of the things that will insulate California to some degree, is if a business has a physical presence in that state, it has one set of rules versus if they don't have a physical presence in that state. And a lot of the larger businesses that California have physical presences in other parts of the country. So I'll get more for you on that, Councilmember Candel. I don't have a full answer right now. I'm still wrapping my head around how it all works.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And any more questions from the council on this? I just had one real quick. It's Kevin. Just in terms of the analysis of the property tax, I mean, that's great news. And I'm wondering, and you're probably still sorting, and you and Kathy are still kind of sorting out how that's trending. But do we have any expectation based upon feedback from, you know, the realtors or anything about how that's likely to continue to transpire?
So your planning and building director, Neil, talked yesterday that his department's currently processing 7 resale applications. We do an inspection when a house turns over. We have a process for evaluating during a resale. That's a very high number to be going on actively at any one time. So, and his experience has been, we're still trending very high in resale inspections. So for us, that's a measure that this trend seems to be continuing. The property is turning over. You know, and then anecdotally, we've heard from a few realtors that the demand to move out of more dense urban areas and into places like Marin is very high. Mm-hmm. And so that's some of what we're experiencing.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's true just based upon experiences in my own family. I mean, folks are moving out of Silicon Valley and they're heading up here. So.
All right. What's next on your slide?
Before I move on, I'll move to the next slide. Bear in mind, some of this 6% jump may be the result of property that was in, that had an assessed value that dated back 10, 20, 30 years. Even as property turns over, we may not see quite this crazy a surge, because if a property was purchased 6 years ago and it turns over, that reassessed value is probably not the level of appreciation that may be explained here.
And that's actually part of the reason that I was asking the question. And if there's some, and I understand it can't be sorted out quickly, but in terms of the housing stock that's turning over, you know, if it's the old stuff that's turning over is allowing a significant increase, but that's going to get wiped out over the course of a year or two, then it would be interesting to know whether, you know, how that's going to play out.
It's something we can ask some questions about. I'm not sure we can get you a great answer.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But it's a matter of curiosity, because it does have an impact on our long-term finances.
So this is a graph we created to kind of show you how sales tax flowed into the city during the fiscal year. The system, the financial system, took our final budget for the year, 2.8 million, and just divided it by 12. So you're seeing that under that methodology, sales tax would grow every 233,000 every month. Excuse me. That's not really how it flows into the city. It kind of ebbs and flows throughout the year. So it's not stunning to us to see a lag where the gray bar, which is our actual numbers, is below that amount. Lags occur for all sorts of reasons. One is the state purposely has set up the system so sales tax comes to the local jurisdiction about 2 months after it's been collected up at the state. That gives them processing time. It gives them a chance to make sure things are accurate. Many businesses also can petition, and there's times when their receipts can be late, and that's sometimes allowable, and they sometimes choose to pay a penalty for whatever reason and turn in their receipts slowly. So that's another reason we sometimes don't see returns right away. The state also does an interesting aspect of its methodology where they start to predict what you're going to get, and they advance you money. And then the problem is, of course, if they advance you money and then you don't realize that much money in the subsequent month, then they're going to do a true up and deduct later on. I mentioned that particular minutia and technicality because for, I think, the first time probably in Kathy's experience, and it certainly wasn't mine, the city experienced a month where we were told by the state we owed the state money. And the reason was that right before the pandemic, we were getting advanced anticipated receipts so that we would have a healthy cash flow on our sales tax. Standard practice by the state. And then when the economy fell off the cliff at the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't realize the types of returns that we were projected to have before the pandemic hit. So we actually had reached a point where the advance from the state was in excess of what we brought in. And so the state actually, they didn't make us write a check. They just held our account in a negative for a month and then did a true up the subsequent month to make it all balance. But you can see to our pleasant surprise, June looks really healthy. That's actually money that trickled in June, July, and August. Because of this 2-month lag in the system, every year we get money in July and August, and we have to go back and book it into June. And so we always see a big surge in June. We certainly weren't expecting this healthy surge, and that's why, Kathy, and I think a big part of this may be online shopping and the Wayfair decision. And as we have more time with the data, because we just got a lot of this data, we'll be able to dig into that more and have a better understanding of where things landed. But this was a pleasant surprise because we were expecting to finish below 2.6, which is a nice number. And I should also let the council know, because we don't talk a lot about cash flow in the state's system. Because some businesses turn their receipts in late, we might still get checks 6 months from now that technically were revenues that were realized in the last fiscal year. At that point, we won't book them into the last fiscal year. We'll book them into the fiscal year that's going at the time. Because we just assume that that's a minor amount and it washes over each year. But that's how strange the sales tax flow is. Kathy reminded me today, we're still seeing occasional checks for Measure C, not Measure B, Measure C, which hasn't been in effect for almost 2 years. So that's some of the peculiarity of the state system. Excuse me. So here's, I wanted to show you the same chart, but show you for TOT, for our hotel tax. And you can see we were trending really nicely. Those blue lines are the actuals. And you can see how we pretty much stopped bringing in revenue in April, May, and June. The hotel wasn't entirely empty because they were allowed to house essential workers. And so they did do some of that. But this is a fund that we've been accustomed to seeing it outperform our budget. Mm-hmm. It's been outperforming our budget for several years. And so this is certainly a big hit to us to see it underperform. So we have sort of two stories from the revenues for the fiscal year. The first part of the story is the lost opportunity. So we think we lost $165,000 to $225,000 in hotel tax that we would have expected to come in. And then we look at the local sales tax base and we know we missed out on about $500,000 to $600,000 in revenue we would have expected in our fourth quarter, the April, May, and June months. So that certainly is a challenge, and that's on point with what we had projected to you when the pandemic hit, that we had thought we might lose as much as $1 million.
Hey, Dan, I'm sorry, I got a question just for clarification. The amount of the transient tax, is that a lag tax? So does that represent the months, let's say from March till June, or is there a lag so it represents fewer months?
That's what we think we lost March to June. Revenue from TOT gets paid in 1 month behind when it was collected.
So this includes July's payment is part
Correct.
of the budget. Okay, thank you. And
then, but now we know we feel pretty confident this is revenue we essentially lost. But because we had two sources of unanticipated revenue, one we can actually quantify, the property tax. The other we're working on quantifying, which is the Wayfair sales tax money. We ended up sort of at close to a wash in terms of what we lost out in opportunity versus what we made up for in these two sources. So that means that I think when we close the books on the fiscal year, we're going to look pretty good, all things considered, for the past fiscal year. Not great, but good. And you know, we've been working under a model for several years now of trying to outperform our budget to build up cash reserves to manage the bridge project. So the hit we took here from an operational standpoint is the fact that we won't have seen that nice extra push into the bridge fund. But still, this is all things considered, a surprisingly nice story for us. A lot less damage than we thought we were going to experience.
And are we anticipating then, well, if the property tax revenue that was higher being April, is there a way to extrapolate that to being higher in the December payment cycle?
So we typically amend our budget in mid-year if we need to. So we'll have the December returns. So if we're still seeing this trend, Kathy and I may discuss upping the anticipated revenue and the property tax as part of your mid-year budget adjustments. There's a caveat though. We don't know how many people are going to take advantage of the ability to defer their property tax payments. So,
Right.
you know, deferred payment of both property tax and sales tax is a brave new world for us that we're also trying to wrap our heads around.
Yeah. Are we seeing any trend in closure of businesses? I see empty storefronts in newer locations than I've seen before, but are we seeing that trend? Because that'll affect our sales tax revenue.
So we don't have a ready, you know, no one's required to file with the city that they're shutting their doors. If they're a business, okay. No one that files with us. What will happen is that HDL, our sales tax analyst, if it's a sales tax generating business, will see that revenue has stopped from that business, and they'll then go check and determine if the business closed, and then they'll give us a report of businesses that they've confirmed closed. And so we don't yet have a number to give you, but we'll hopefully soon be able to start to report out what they're finding for us. Otherwise, anecdotally, I can only offer the same observation you're offering, which is I am seeing some empty storefronts in places where we had stores previously. What I do think is positive right now, though, is if you pull out our public sales tax report that we provide to you that's published, we publish in there our top 25 sales tax generators without talking about what they actually generate. But I think that list is still pretty strong. I think those businesses are still all with us in some capacity. They may not be performing the way we'd like to see them perform, but they are here. And so that's a really positive thing because those of us who get to dive into the minutia of those numbers, that top 25 in Larkspur is a core part of the sales tax base. Yeah. So,
yeah, Madam Mayor, this is Kevin.
Yes.
I just want to echo that, and I don't have quantitative data, but just based on conversations that we've been having with the Chamber of Commerce, that all sounds kind of consistent. Our smaller businesses throughout the community are really being challenged right now, and I think I know from experience with some folks that I deal with, they've shuttered their doors, but they also probably haven't historically contributed as much to sales tax revenue as some of the businesses that are still vibrant, like the shopping centers, the grocery stores, the pharmacies, and things like that. So as long as they keep going, from a city's perspective, I think that that's going to be helpful.
Before I turn it over to the council for additional discussion, questions, and/or the public, I want to ask Kathy Wilmer if she has anything she'd like to add or something I missed that she'd like to emphasize.
No, I think you've covered it all very well. I mean, and I just, I think this tells, showing it to the council about how the revenue comes in. It's not an easy month to month, and I really wait and hold my breath up until April to see what we really have in property tax, because the April property tax then needs to take us all the way to the next December one. So, I'm watching it really closely at times at the very end of the year. During the year, I have a pretty good idea of what's coming in and if it looks normal or not. And, I think 8 months coming into the year, we look great. During budget season in May, when I had a negative sales tax remittance, this was like very first in my time ever in my career. And I was like, this is scary. So I'm glad that things worked out, but that it's very hard to forecast and predict. So I feel like at the end of the year, I had breathed a sigh of relief.
Great. Dan, could you just clarify for me what the pandemic issued rule about delaying sales property tax payment in December is? People can delay it, but then they do have to pay it double.
It's really important for folks who are considering deferrals for property tax or are considering deferring sales tax, because there's a process to do that for businesses. Those are essentially treated as loans. So there will be additional charges. There's interest on doing that essentially. So it's not something to just do without sort of looking at it in a cash flow perspective.
And also recognizing that cities of our size heavily rely on residential properties and commercial properties paying their property tax if they can.
And the way the deferred property tax is going to work is essentially the tax collector has signaled he understands people may not pay, and there's a date after which there's a penalty. So.
Okay, are there any further questions on this presentation from the council?
Dan Hilmer here. I have a question.
Yes, please.
Just a quick on the methodology and format for this presentation. I found the monthly more detailed look at this to be incredibly helpful. Do you see us continuing to do that, at least through the pandemic, Dan?
We'd be more than happy to send you monthly, send you the report on revenues monthly. I would say we could send you expenditures monthly, but the city, the way we spend money is so crazy sometimes. I mean, as Kathy will explain to you, because she has it all dialed in her head, August is a big month for the police department, I think, and a different month is a big month for engineering to spend money, and but revenue, we could send you, I think, the same report you've received every month if you'd like.
No, I was really asking the way you presented it tonight. You broke things out and showed, for example, a graphic representation of the various trends by month. Not that you would report to us monthly, but just the way you presented it tonight, I found that to tell a very important story with respect to your message to us tonight. And thank you, Kathy and staff, for all the hard work that went into that. That was great.
Yeah, and this is Kevin. Let me chime in. I agree with all of that stuff, and with particularly with the expression of appreciation for the hard work that Kathy and others on our staff are doing. I don't think it really matters so much, at least to me, what the numbers are in a given month, but having some appreciation of trends is really, I think, something that's helpful to us. So I want to thank Councilmember Helmer for making that suggestion.
Okay, since this is a business item, is there any member of the studio audience, our public that has a public comment? We have about looks like four individuals here. I don't see any hands raised. Is there any member of the public who has submitted an email question, Allison?
I see no emailed public comment.
All right, thank you. And this memo is available on our city, on our agenda page.
It is.
Great. So I'll just bring it back to us and say thank you. And if there are any further questions, we'll move on to the next business item. And I echo the bar chart analysis. I really thought that was very helpful for us too. I appreciated that. Looks like our next business item is update on city activities in response to the coronavirus, COVID-19, 8.3.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I wanted to share with the council that, well, a couple of things. One is, as was mentioned earlier in the meeting, the county's been moved from Tier 1 to Tier 2. And I want to acknowledge the hard work that was done by members of the county staff to work with the state to better understand the trend numbers that were occurring in Marin. I think there were some methodology issues that had come up that had left Marin in purple a little longer than folks had anticipated. It doesn't mean we should stop being vigilant, but it certainly is a positive sign that Marin is going in the right direction. Your city staff externally have, as I mentioned earlier, been very focused on educational outreach, particularly to businesses where we've gotten different complaints from the public. And what we're trying to do as much as possible is share those complaints, respecting the desire for folks to remain anonymous with the businesses, particularly because a lot of times the complaints we're seeing have to do with maybe a restaurant hasn't put a protocol in place to sort of encourage pedestrians to move along, and they're lingering around tables where people are dining. And so that's just a discussion with the restaurant about talking to the wait staff, that it'd be good to kind of remind folks that we need to keep some separation as we dine outdoors. Internally, we are very focused on the library at the moment and trying to figure out what we will do there. We are getting quotes to install a system that will allow after hours pickup of materials so that we can help folks out who can't make it during our curbside time. And we may be able to extend the locker system to planning and building so folks can pick up or drop off materials after hours, which we think will be very helpful. And then we are talking quite a bit with the county right now to get some clarity around the different rules for our parks. And I understand there's going to be a big meeting on Friday among all park administrators to sort of decide how to do better signage. We're going to be putting in some permanent signage because we're spending way too much money and time putting up temporary signs about wearing a mask and maintaining 6 feet. And whether they're blowing away in the wind or folks are tearing them down, we think those messages are here to stay for quite a while, and it's worth the investment to put permanent signs in about those particular messages. Those have been a lot of our COVID focus. You've also probably seen, if you've been in our downtown, we have 3 eateries that are increasingly investing in parklets that we allowed them to operate. We're actually in discussions with some of them about putting in something that's a little more substantial so that it might have some weatherproofing opportunity for them during the colder months. And as by moving into red, though, restaurants now can allow some limited indoor dining, and I was observing that that was taking place today. So folks are making that transition. And we just want to remind folks, we're here as a resource. You can always reach out to the city staff if you have questions about what the rules are. We're happy to help.
Great.
Just a quick question,
Sure.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
So we've moved into, or Marin has moved into Tier 2 at this point.
Yes.
So so that should be helpful. I'm not sure how long that's going to last, but can you just, do you have an understanding about what that means specifically for our businesses in terms both of the relaxation of requirements and the timing? Because I was confused about, frankly, the timing. I thought we'd have to wait for a couple of weeks.
No, so when you move to a new tier, the county is then allowed to look at a list that the state has that's available on the state website of the rules for that tier. And then the county can decide whether to allow those new loosened rules to take place. And the county of Marin has elected to generally be very consistent with what the state's allowing. So as of Tuesday, the vast majority of the rules on the state website that apply to businesses for Tier 2 counties are being allowed in Marin. So that's 10% capacity in a gym, for example, is allowed. 25% for dining is allowed indoors. Those types of things. There are additional aspects of Tier 2 that require us to remain in Tier 2 numbers for a minimum of 2 weeks. The most significant of those is whether or not the schools can open up. We have to see that we have Tier 2 numbers for the next 2 weeks, and that we're holding steady, and then the schools will be able to open up. And some schools petitioned for a waiver when we were purple. That's why they've actually already opened up.
Right. Marin Primary is open. Marin Primary in Larkspur is open.
I suspect they had petitioned for a waiver already. If businesses have a question, we're happy to direct them. There's a really nice matrix on the state's website. There should now be a link on Marin Recovers. Our staff has been following the Marin Recovers website and building our links to send people there, because you want to make sure you're reading what the county's allowing and the state's allowing. And Marin Recovers site is a good resource for that. If you want to see what I'm talking about in action, the county to visit is Santa Clara County's website. Santa Clara has chosen not to allow some of the Tier 2 activity the state's allowed. So that's a demonstration that the county does have some discretion to be stricter than what the county allows. Our county is just at this time not choosing to do that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's also very important to remember that COVID-19 is not gone. It's still in our community, and the mitigations of the masks and hand washing and keeping a distance and doing all of those CDC recommendations, even though we're loosening up, we don't want to return to a more stricter lockdown because the virus is still in the community. It's just not in the numbers it had been in before. So we need to make sure people are not becoming complacent and realize that we can easily be reversed come fall if this resurges again. So, and the virus is not going away for a while, and we just need to adapt to that. Just putting that out there, my nurse hat on.
No, thank you, Madam Mayor, for that comment.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. Mostly, I just want to make sure we're messaging to the public what is allowed and what's not allowed in a way that's consistent with both the county and the state.
Any questions on this? Thank you for that presentation. And I don't see anyone in the audience with their hand up. It leads us to our last item, which is 8.4 City Financial Update, which I feel like you have already done, unless there's more you would like to add.
I apologize. I meant to combine these and start doing them as one report. I'll do that the next meeting. I did have one tidbit I held back, which is Measure B returns, which are, we collect on both local sales tax, but we also collect it when people order goods online from like Amazon and have it delivered here in Larkspur. And we also collect it on automobiles and automobile sales. That's actually holding at budget. And that was one of our concerns. So that Measure B might underperform and down the road cause us a financing problem for the bond that we issued. I'm pleased to report as of right now, it's trending along budget. So that's a really good sign, and probably a sign that folks are still spending money. They're just spending it in different places than they were before.
Okay. It looks like we've met our agenda, and I look forward to seeing everybody dialing into the Marin Mayors and Council Members presentation, which is next Wednesday. I believe it's 5:30, but stay tuned for an email about that. Once again, all of us would like to thank you, Allison, for that presentation. I believe that was one of your first to the council since you became a member of our team. So thank you for doing that and being able to adjust as we ask questions. If I don't have any further questions, I think we are adjourned until
just to chime in on your last comment, to express appreciation for Allison. She does yeoman's work so much in the background. Today she had an opportunity to highlight herself, and that was terrific. But I really do feel appreciative of her hard work, taking care of things in the background. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
All right. So we are adjourned until October 7th, 2020. See everybody around.
Have a
Good
good
night.
night.
Okay. Thanks, folks.